I had stated in an earlier video that it was my personal belief that modern science is simply the business of disproving God and disproving the Bible. Because written into, or baked into, perhaps is a better term, the methodologies, there is an assumption that everything must be rational. Everything must be reproducible. If man can't do it, then it doesn't exist. And that's why I believe this. On top of that, there is direct physical evidence that we are in possession of that shows there is a lost culture to history. That shows we have a part of our past that we can't explain. We're going to talk about that in today's video. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Antikythera Mechanism. Some of you may or may not have heard of the Voynich Manuscript or the Phaistos disc. These three things, along with other historical notes, prove that we have a culture we have yet to find. I personally believe it's here. The reason science disproves it is because I believe many have understood this in the past and have found evidence in Antarctica, primarily underneath the ice, that proves a great many things in the Bible are true. And that some things that are true to reality and true to our world can't be reproduced by man. And that goes directly against the religion, or I should say the business of science, modern science. The fact that the surface of Antarctica is a frozen, windblown nightmare is not up for debate, but it doesn't preclude the idea of life existing underneath the ice. In fact, science has released article after article stating they have found these caverns, these tunnels that are 70, 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is basically room temperature. They found volcanic soil, DNA they can't explain. Caverns so large you could take off and fly a plane in them. Under a mile of ice. Things we can't hardly wrap our mind around. This is one of those articles, and I've covered it for a long time, and I'm going to continue to cover it, and I'll give you the link to it. Because when they say something like this, it opens up a whole new world. Now they want to talk about bugs and fish and crustaceans and different aquatic creatures. But all those things exist in a chain everywhere else in the world. They don't exist all by themselves. Also, many people are unaware that the graves of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Genghis Khan, and Antony and Cleopatra have never been found. Don't you find that odd? That these three, or four, I guess, incredibly important people to history, no one knows where they're buried? Where could they have gone? Even 2,000 years ago, the Greeks had triremes, big 3-deck ships that projected power. Who knows how far they could have gone? Who knows where they could have visited? One of the things that is evidence of trade is when cultures collide or they interact, they always leave behind parts of each other. Meaning things we have found in the Mediterranean, on Crete and in Italy and in other places and in Egypt, may have originated there, but they may not have. Now, real quick, just because it's part of the video, every night at Twitch, we get together, those of us who are subscribed and followers, and we've been playing this game called Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Part of the game is you can take command of a ship. This is the address to you, and you can sail around basically the entire Aegean and visit island after island and visit people and talk about history. It's not just sneaking around and killing people and all the violence. It's a great deal of history, and it sparks a lot of thought and a lot of conjecture and conversation. These 4 items, the Phytos disc up here in the upper left, the Voynich Manuscript upper right, the Codex Gigas, which we'll cover in another video, and the Antikythera Mechanism are all proof that there is a lost civilization somewhere that no one has discovered yet. And given that we have uncovered virtually the entire planet other than Antarctica, I think we can probably make the leap that that's probably where it is. Now, there are some things, especially in the Voynich Manuscript, that correlate to things we've already discovered. The coin, of course, like every coin, has 2 sides. This particular one, and I'll give you a link to this image, or you can look it up for yourself, Phaitos disc, has in the center of it a flower with 8 petals. And that image repeats, along with all sorts of other images. There's a disc with what looks like 7 dots. These seem like very simple images, but to this day, no one has been able to decipher this. Not even the military's best decoders. And it's held under guard in Knossos. Or actually, it was found in Knossos, and it's held in Heraklion. I believe that's how you pronounce it. In Greece, they found this in the 1900s. And it has basically this code on it that no one can understand. But this is the other side of it, where you don't find the same images. You find a completely different set of images. Now, hang on to that idea real quick of that 8-petaled flower. They believe it was associated with the Minoans. The Minoans were also associated with the lily. And you can look that up. I'll give you the links to the wiki. Now, stay with me on this. This is the Voynich Manuscript. The Phytos disc and the Voynich Manuscript have something in common. Believe it or not. It's a 200-page text that also, by the way, no decoder, no decipherer, no language expert has been able to translate. They have no idea what it says. But there's all sorts of pictures of flowers. It seems like it's some type of an alchemical guidebook or something to do with herbalism. But there was one image in it that caught my eye, and it's this image in the upper right. We have this blue, some type of a blue flower that 4 petals are very different than the other 4 petals, and there's something different in the middle. Who knows what the image on the right is from other videos? This is the Order of Leopold. Now, those who remember the other videos go, oh my gosh, look at how close those two are in imagery. What's the important connection with the Order of Leopold? Remember, the Phytos disc had an 8-sided flower in the dead center of one side of it. The Voynich Manuscript has this 8-petaled flower in blue. And then we also have this Order of Leopold tied to King Baudouin, King of the Belgians. What's important about this? Well, the Belgians were the first expedition to winter in Antarctica back in 1899. Every member of the expedition was made part of the Order of Leopold. This is the other part of that order. There's 2 medallions. There's a brooch and a medallion. The medallion is a dead ringer for the Knights Templar cross. And this is the wiki to that Belgian Antarctic expedition. So we have this weird tie-in with the Voynich Manuscript, written in a language no one can understand, but the imagery is very familiar. Throughout that entire book, there are just things they've never seen. There's plants they've never seen. They said that it looks like somebody took the stem of one and put it on the roots of another, and it somehow made flowers from yet a third plant. The Voynich Manuscript, the Codex Gigas, the Antikythera Mechanism, which we're going to cover in another video, all correlate to this idea. The idea that there is a lost culture. An idea that there's part of history either somebody knows and they're not telling us, or they don't know themselves, or they're looking into it secretly. For those of you who don't know what the Antikythera Mechanism is, they pulled this off the ocean floor some years ago and ran it through an X-ray machine, and given how old it is, there's no way it could have been constructed at that time with known technology. More evidence of a lost culture. We have missing languages. We have items we can't explain as far as their advancement goes. The language thing, for me, is the biggest one. Because different cultures create different languages based on different thought processes. The Minoans may not have been who we thought they were. This is part of that Voynich Manuscript. Tens of thousands of words in a 200-page, individual, unique words, in a 200-page manuscript, and they haven't even put a dent in it. They have no idea, but they know it's a language because it has grammatical structure to it. So, to my mind, those two things specifically, the Phytos disc, given that it has an 8-sided flower, and now we see an image from the Voynich Manuscript that also has an 8-sided flower, and then we also see this exact image being worn by the King of Belgium and awarded to the first group of people to winter in Antarctica. Something is going on. I believe the Germans in the 40s knew what was going on here, knew they had proof of something, knew that it might change the world. And that would explain why, after the war was over, all of a sudden the U.S. had this giant interest in Antarctica. Operation High Jump. What were they looking for? What would have been the point? Seriously, after the war, what would have been the point? Going to Antarctica, the U.S. military. I think this is what it is. The biggest historical, archaeological, scientific discovery in mankind's history would be this: an entire continent and a lost culture that fills in all the blanks. And science may know something that would make them have to revisit their whole methodology. And I'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.